This is my Waverly Hill Sanatorium story. This experience happened on my second visit. I went with two of my cousins and a friend of my cousins. A couple of things happened on this visit, but this was the most intense. We had just walked a mother and a daughter back to the exit and used the facilities while we were there. Three of my two cousins and I decided to head back up to the fourth floor. The first floor, at this time, was decorated for the annual haunted house with paint on the walls and props stored in many of the rooms. Because of this, we didn't want to hang on the first floor too long, thinking that nothing much would happen. As we were approaching the stairs to start heading to the floors above, we noticed that the hallways seemed unusually dark. Because Waverly is open, and we were outside the city of Louisville, and there was a full moon, there was actually quite a bit of light coming into the building. There's also lights outside and exit signs within. In short, there's typically enough light to see fairly well, and what was down the other half of the hallway was pitch black. We shrugged it off and headed onward, and within a few minutes found ourselves unable to see ahead or behind us. I distinctly remember bringing my hand up and being unable to see it. We groped around and managed to grab each other, silently deciding to just stay still. I'm not sure how much time passed, but probably only a couple of minutes had gone by, when from behind us we hear, "What are you doing?" We turned around and there was a tour guide, and suddenly we could see again. We explained that we stopped because we couldn't see our way forward, and the guide looked at us a little incredulously. This is when we began to notice that not only had we passed a bright exit sign, but also numerous rooms, including a rather large meeting-type area. The large area clearly had lights outside of it, and the light from the city was flooding in as well. All in all, I believe we walked far enough to have passed 6 or so rooms without having seen any of them. All three of us decided that it was a little weird, but headed to the stairs to go up to the higher floors. We wound up running into a larger part of the group that had decided to stay together, and a younger guide. The guide was in the middle of going over the types of shadow entities one might encounter at Waverly. The last one he mentioned was described as a giant black shadow that settled over the hallway, shrouding it in a deep blackness. We were all advised to go the other way if we saw it, apparently. This entity is what they called Big Black. My cousins and I nervously laughed out loud together, which irritated the tour guide. He accused us of thinking it was all fake, and we assured him that we didn't think so at all because we had just seen Big Black. I was stood next to the hole in the fence that would be my only entrance into and exit from the compound, frozen solid like prey, staring up at my predator, as if I was trying to calculate its next move. Surprisingly, the fact that I could even see it, as it was quite dark. The sparse light pollution provided very limited visibility as a background for the dark looming buildings, and there was a light dusting of mist brushing in from the sea, making things seem a bit out of focus. My breathing was hurried as I contemplated what I was about to do. I only had half an idea of what kind of danger I might be putting myself into, but I felt like I needed to put to bed some questions I had, and get some answers for the strange events that had occurred since that fateful night. I needed to put my emotions to bed in that moment, for sure. I focused on my breathing, setting forth on my mission and proceeding to enter through the fence and make my way to the CRT room. And while doing this, my senses were on overdrive, and I was listening out for every single noise that was not part of the ambient environment, made quite difficult due to the soft lashing of the waves from the sea. When I got to the door of the CRT room, I did a quick survey of the area, and then flicked on my torch to find that there was no padlock or any device to restrict entry. I had no trouble opening the door, which suggested to me that somebody was expecting me. That thought made me very alert and uncomfortable. The room was not very big, but its content was very striking to say the least. All around the room, there were not old CRT monitors, but instead odd symbols written all over the walls. I guess these are what they call symbols of the occult, I thought to myself. At the back of the room, there was what looked like a desk with various bits of paper and documents strewn all across it. I shuffled over to browse through the material when my suspicions about my presence being expected, they were confirmed to me as I checked the scrap of paper that was on top of all the mess. It read, "Tonight is the night. See." I didn't think I could be any more scared in this situation, but now I was terrified. This feeling was new to me too. It was like an immense fear, the feeling of helplessness, the feeling of dread. My inner child was crying out with the most subconscious state of human fear now awakened. I pictured it as a child lost in the darkness, sat crying for its mother while the monsters in the darkness surrounded it, the mother having abandoned the child long ago. But I tried to push on. I moved the note aside and uncovered a news report from the local paper from around 40 years ago. It had a picture of the base under a headline of body parts found scattered at HMS. I couldn't help but think, what the hell? In summary, the article reported how there were parts of the same body found scattered around the base, in different buildings, although a head was never found. You'd think I'd be creeped out by the head not being recovered, but no. The thing that creeped me out was the name of the individual to which the body was identified via DNA sampling. Richard. The name sent a shiver throttling through my spine. This had to be the Richard to which the Ouija board was referring to. There was definitely more to the story of this death. But what relevance does this have to do with what's happening to A, B, and I? Maybe reading on would give me another answer. I shifted the news report aside to be greeted with what looked like a collage of smaller headlines, with one big headline in the middle. The smaller headlines reported about a different suicide each time, all within the base, and the big headline reported about the base closing down due to an increase in the number of suicides, as well as the increasing number of staff who were being diagnosed with manic depression. It was intriguing that 60% of the suicides reported were of the general members of the public who would break onto the property, and 40% were staff-based at the site who would often access restricted areas before committing the act. Why did all of these people commit suicide in the same place? What drew them here? Of all places you could spend your last minutes, why here? At the time, I remember holding this collage, being absolutely stunned by the sheer amount of suicides that had occurred. But I felt like my brain was processing something subconsciously. All the events had been related to Richard. I checked the dates of the articles, and, as predicted, they all occurred after Richard's body was found in pieces. I placed the collage to the side to see another news report, which looked like it was the last one in the pile, with the headlines, "No suicide since site closure. Coincidence?" And the article was an extension of its headline with statistics about who died and when, again with Richard's name first on the list. The article ventured to question why the suicides started after Richard's death, when the site had been open for decades before his death. Whatever started the suicides started with Richard, but Richard's death clearly wasn't a suicide. I pulled the article about Richard back over to reread and see if I missed any important details, but there was not much written about the body other than the pieces being scattered in different buildings. There was nothing written in this article that confirmed whether Richard's death was a suicide or whether he was brutally murdered, but the way his body was disposed of confirmed to me, at least, that he was indeed murdered. Something was definitely off. Another realization suddenly dawned on me. I have lived in this city since I was born and have done extensive research on its history and any conspicuous buildings. Yet the history on the base was significantly light in comparison, and these articles definitely never showed up. Were they even real? I needed to read on. I moved both articles aside to find a paper folder full of different bits and pieces that, when I picked it up, 2 photos fell on the floor. When I picked them up and looked at them, I could have nearly vomited. Each photo was of a different limb, one a leg, one an arm. I didn't want to look too long at the pictures. I didn't need to, as I got what I needed to see from them. Each limb had a different symbol drawn in thick black pen, symbols that I recognized from plenty that were written all around the room. I checked the folder again, and I found the other 2 limbs as well as the torso again, each with a different symbol, but I found no head. Working things out, I'm guessing that these limbs belong to Richard. Rooting around in the folder, I pulled out an A4 size piece of paper that seemed to be a rough blueprint of the compound, which had 5 crosses marked on it, obviously meaning that I had to work out that that's where the body parts were found. 1 cross was in the L-shaped building, 1 was in the gate operator's building, 1 was in the sea-facing big building, and 1 was in the big building where we heard the loud bangs, and the last cross was placed in the middle, near equidistant of the other crosses. Holy shit, dude, I thought, suddenly realizing a pattern. Join all the parts and draw a circle around them, and you have a pentagram. This evidence definitely confirmed to me that Richard was involved in, or was the victim of, some sort of ritual. My imagination started running wild and came to a conclusion that whatever ritual that was performed had covered an area big enough to cover the whole compound. I thought back to the night of our urban exploration, and how we all jointly felt the fear and negativity that seemed to seep out of the base, and how the atmospheric conditions seemed to play against us. I thought about how everything is a bit crazy, and how my friends and I had stumbled into some weird multi-dimensional rift or something. This can't all be linked, can it? I have to be losing my mind here. Wait a minute. I realized that there was one significant omission from the diagram. There's still no indication of where Richard's head is. I studied this blueprint in more detail to find any clue as to where this head may be, but I didn't find anything. I shook myself to readjust my focus. I was getting lost in all of this lore and myth of the place that I needed to remember the situation I found myself in. When I shook my head, my eyes clapped onto something familiar in an otherwise unfamiliar environment that stunned me into disbelief. A brown, antique box, which looked suspiciously like the one that A had taken from his very room. And to top off the strangeness, lying next to it, looking ready to play, was the Ouija board. Fuck that, I thought. What is that doing there? That's supposed to be at A's house. I shuffled over to the box to inspect it. This was definitely the one that A had taken. Had he been back here? I opened the box and had to stifle a scream as a shiny skull greeted me. The skull had a symbol drawn on its forehead in black pen. This can't be. They spent ages looking for it, but never found it. A had to have seen the skull. He had to have seen everything that was inside the room. Why didn't he say anything to us? With all of these discoveries being too much to handle, I didn't realize that I'd begun outletting my shock as I whispered by asking these questions to myself. I ended up nearly pissing myself when I received an answer in response to my questions, before feeling the back of my leg behind my ankle being sliced and falling to the floor as a result of the instant shock of pain and loss of control of my feet.
Why did you not tell us about the black ghost you saw?
As I lay on the floor, writhing in pain as my Achilles started gushing with blood, I shone my torch up to see the shine of a metal blade with my blood dripping from it, and nearly fainted when I recognized its owner. It was A. A? I puffed as I felt my body shut down from the shock and blood loss. What the fuck? G'day mates, it's Busta here. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their stories for us all here, and I hope you guys are all doing really well. For the chance to have your story feature in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. If you would like more scary stories too, you can click on the card at the top right of your screen or on one of the annotations on your screen right now. As always guys, it would be awesome if you could like, share, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates throughout the week.
And also, if you would like content early and completely advert-free for as little as $1 a month, feel free to click on the link to my Patreon account and sign up there for regular MP3 format stories. Thanks again for tuning in and for all the love as always, guys, and I'll see you mates in the next one.